Okay, everybody. Well, man, I'm in a little bit of a mood this morning because we have lost over half of our flock of chickens this week. We had some coyotes move into our area, and I mean, it's just devastating. We had a couple of weak points in our coop, specifically this automatic door, and I don't know why in 2024 it's so hard to get an automatic door. And this is kind of why I started this channel, not because of the chickens, but the concept. Because I got really sick of paying a lot of money, good money, for a product that then ended up being junk. And in the past, I feel like there was a better correlation between what something costs and the quality that it provided. And there's a term for that. There's a marketing term for that. I mean, we ought to treat marketers like we treat lawyers. I mean, we really do. If a marketer is moving his lips, he's lying. I have a couple of explanations for that. Is number one, the way that we engineer a product today, the way that we bring it to market today, is you've got a bunch of guys in a room or wherever, and they get together and they say, hey, we're gonna sell a product. And it's like, cool. Have you been developing it? Have you been researching it? Is it your life's passion? Great, tell me about it. And they say, no, none of those things. I just want to sell a product. And we're gonna go to East Asia or somewhere similar, somewhere comparable, and we're going to find out who can manufacture something in this product category that we want to offer, and we're going to dress it up, we're going to put lipstick on that pig, we're going to sell it at a price point, they're going to fix that price point, and then they're going to bring that product to the market. And that historically, if you look at how products came to market, historically, that could not be farther than the traditional way that products were innovated and sold. Look at the great companies from time past. You look specifically, tools are an awesome example. It's going to be some guy that rented a space in the back of somebody's building, and he had an anvil and he had a hammer and he had a dream. No, and he made a better post hole digger. He made a better type of hammer with better steel based on, his heat treatment process. And he added the right amount of vanadium or chromium or, that's how we got chrome vanadium steels. Really, I don't know if the Vaughns invented that, but they really pioneered adding vanadium to steel for toughness. And if you look into the story, I've done a video on Vaughn. This guy was, in Chicago, and he borrowed some money from Bushnell to start Vaughn and Bushnell, and they had a couple of ideas for some farm implements, and then from there you have one of the most historic axe companies in the world, at least in the U.S. And to this day, because they've actually figured out a lot of their issues with their insolvency, I believe they will continue to be making products. I'm expecting them to drop their axes. I mean, I really am. I found one of the last. I mean, if you go into a store and you see a Vaughn axe, I bought this a couple months ago, and somebody just did a number on it. I tell you what. It was still a little spendy. I wouldn't have bought it if Vaughn was still in business. I think I paid $25 for this. But for the nostalgia, I got one of the last. This is a 28 ounce. So that's, we are just approaching 2 pounds there for a little guy like this. This is a true to purpose. Look at that profile. Heuing axe. Hatchet, flat back. We have the one thing about it is, actually it does have the cup. I hadn't really looked at that. And one thing I'm trying to maintain, I'm even going to accentuate that cup, because when you have that cup, that toe that points out to the front, it's like cambering the edges of your plane iron. You're not going to cut into the wood. That lip is going to ride. And I tell you what. Okay. So we're getting into it this morning. If you've seen Dustin's treat a beam. I can't remember what it is. Just look up Dan Dustin. He's still with us. Look up Dan Dustin. Go subscribe to Dan Dustin's channel. He's amazing. He's a great guy. He is a professional musician, and hewing is something that he is very passionate about. Carpentry and the crafts. He makes amazing utensils, amazing spoons and forks, and they come with a lifetime warranty. So I watched one of his videos, and he sold like a salad fork, or maybe it was a soup fork, to somebody, and after years of use, they send it back to him and say, hey, can you fix this? And I think he enjoys that. I mean, I really do. That's what we used to have. There used to be the guy that makes tin plates, the guy that makes, the best soup spoon. There used to be the guy, and then you had an incentive to become that guy and ingrain yourself in your community. And so, I mean, I think he kind of enjoyed fixing this stuff. But after years and years and years, these utensils had just dried out and cracked. Like, that's what happens when wood gets wet and dry over years and years and years. Totally expected. It's not a fault of the utensil. And he fixed it. Or maybe he made him another one. I can't remember exactly what he did. But back to Dan Dustin, what I was going to say is, so he has some opinions, and some guys have just been nasty about this, which is the stupidest thing to be nasty about on my channel, talking about how beams get the cup. And Dan Dustin says, well, let's see. He says, well, the cup comes from hewing with the bevel side in. And he says traditionally that's the way that it would have been done. And this is from the 80s. And he says, a lot of people say that comes from an adze, but it comes from the broad axe hewing bevel side in. And I have a different opinion, with all due respect to Dan Dustin, all due respect. Nothing is going to prove that he's wrong, but just my work experience and my life experience tells me that I have a little bit of a different opinion. I'll tell you where that cup comes from. Woohoo! This is my favorite broad axe. I made this broad axe handle on the channel. I bent the handle, and I've had another, anyways, I won't get into that, but, but here we go. Okay, so let me tell you where that cup comes from. It comes from this right here. Look at this profile. Let me get a straight edge. I have a straight edge, but I don't know if it's gonna be, oh, it is long enough. Okay, look at that. So here, look at how cupped that is. This has a really high center line, and then the heel is it goes like this. It scoops out on the cheeks of the axe. I don't know if you can see that. I can see it plain as day. But look at that scoop there. Can you see that? The camera really distorts things. But look at how it literally cups. When I hew a beam with this, I get that cupped pattern. And this is my favorite broad axe, hands down. You can still get broad axes pretty cheap online. This one, I am positive, is a cast steel bit. You can actually see on the back here, there's a weld line with an iron body, and there is little hope of finding some kind of a maker's mark on here. I think it probably says cast steel. There's just a little bit of writing on the back, and I've tried to figure out what this is or who made it, but it's an extremely common pattern. So there's very little hope of finding out who made it. This is a white oak handle that I bent. It's super easy to bend handles. If you want to get into hewing, just for fun. I mean, this cordwood challenge is awesome. It's so cool. Getting people out there to practice these traditional skills, they added a hewing component to it. So now I'm not real specific on the exact rules of it for entry. I've never done the cordwood challenge, but I've watched a lot of cordwood challenge videos. And I think that is so cool that they added a hewing component to that, because these axes, using them is, I mean, it's like chef's kiss, you know? This is peak technology from, 18 whatever, pick your date. I'm sure this is an 1800s axe. By the 1900s, we were stick framing houses, and we weren't even balloon framing them. We were just traditional, floor on walls, framing houses. So using this is amazing. We've really forgotten how to make these. I mean, there's a couple companies that make new broad axes, but all of that technology, all of the little tricks, like, you want to kind of cup your bit and flare it out a little, and all that's gone. I mean, you can buy a new broad axe, but I've definitely bought new broad axes. And if I could go over and just start over and do it again, I would save my money on a new broad axe, hold out for a really good vintage broad axe, because nobody's making them like this anymore. So anyways, that's where I think the cup comes from, a cupped beam. It comes from a bit that's actually fairly, check this out. Look at that. Oh, sorry. Can you see there you go. You can see the cup there. Let me get close on that. Look at how cupped that is. That to me, and I can't say that nobody hewed with the bevel in, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way you are hewing. If your axe is cupped like this, you're going to create that scoop. So I can't say that Dan Dustin is wrong about that. I'm very loath to say that. I can't say that based on my evidence, but I can say that based on my experience, this broad axe creates a cupped beam, and it does it flat side to the beam, not bevel in. I have hewed with this bevel side in, chopping out a knot, or maybe I just have to because of positioning on the log, but it's not the most efficient way. That introduces too many variables. You have to hold the axe different at a compound angle, and it's just, I don't believe historically that would have been done. So, man, we covered coyotes, Vaughn and Bushnell, Dan Dustin. All right. Anyways, this just turned into kind of a riff. I'm in a weird mood. I've got some kind of cold going on, and my doctor prescribed me prednisone. So, my gosh, steroids just absolutely amp me up. And then I'm drinking coffee on top of that. But okay, so Kevin, a buddy of mine, that's what this video is about. Kevin and I got to talking about Plum Nationals on Instagram. Great axes. The Plum Nationals are a real testament to the way things used to be done in the hand tool industry. Plum decided that over a period of years, they were going to invest a great deal of money and a great deal of time surveying axe users and trying to figure out what features they wanted on an axe. What made an axe useful to them, what they wish their axe had, what they wish it didn't have, the weights, the shape, all of that. The pole, the bit profile, just everything. We're going to do a complete survey of the axe market, and we are going to create an axe, and it was all the way from full-size axe all the way down to hatchet. A line of edge tools that will satisfy every axe user in the country. And they came out with the Plum National, which goes all the way from hatchet, like, a pound and a quarter. I don't know what the smallest Plum National they made, all the way up. I've seen Plum Nationals at like 4 pounds, and I don't know how heavy they got, but that's just to tell you this was a complete design. It had everything. It just an amazing axe pattern. It borrows from the rafter pattern. A lot of people look at a Plum National and they think it's a rafter. It's got kind of the sloped, chamfered profile, and Here we go. I need to send this out to somebody after I touch it up. But this Flying Fox is very reminiscent of the Plum National. You know, the Plum National, I think, has a little bit wider bit. Maybe it's a little bit more curved, but this pole is just about exactly what that Plum National looks like. And this Flying Fox is a heck of an axe. I think it has a lot of the same features as the Plum National, because a lot of those features are rightfully identified as something that makes a great axe. You want a bit that's fairly tall. You want the bit profile to be a little bit curved, gently curved, but not too curved. Too flat, and you're gonna just bounce off the wood. Too curved, and you end up creating these little crescents all over the wood, and they don't split. It's harder to create a chip, you know, a good chip. So you want it to be curved just ever so appropriately. That slope up, it really helps with the weight. The chamfer on the pole, I mean, just, I love this Flying Fox. And the Flying Fox is very reminiscent of those Plum Nationals. And, you know, the Plum Nationals were sent out to, they were Boy Scout axes for a long time. You could buy Boy Scout axe, made in the U.S. Can you imagine? I mean, just absolutely incredible. And so Kevin offered to send me one, and at first I was like, yeah, you know, I've been meaning to pick one up. I could buy one. And then he said, no, I'll just send you one. So I thought, okay, well, cool. All right, I'll send you something. That's really nice. So the logical thing for me to send him was some of my axe oil. And, you know, I'll tell you what, I think I'm just going to give out my first batch, you know, just to friends and people who are in the axe community and I think doing what I do and enjoying what I do, because I mean, it's one of those activities where, you know, I feel like that's probably the biggest impact for me. I really appreciate being a part of this axe community. There's some jerks out there. You know, the craft attracts some people who I don't think actually use axes that much, but oh my gosh, they have opinions on how axes should be used. And it's like, go have your opinion. You know, go have your opinion on somebody else's channel. You know, that's not what we're here for. I'd like to be a little more positive than that. And so I think probably my best use for this, I'm going to give out the first round, and if I ever do a second batch, these are the tannins. This is pretty cool. I've got a whole quart jar filled with the tannins. This stuff is just really cool. It's just inky. I mean, this is concentrated. I mean, wow. I have enough there for enough axe oil for me for the rest of my life. But this axe oil is amazing. It's natural. It's got, I'll just tell you the formula. Here's the thing. Nobody is going to recreate this because it takes forever. Absolutely forever. It, you know, you've got to first get a whole bunch of oak logs. I used black oak, for this, I used white oak for this batch. I used black oak for the next batch. That's right. It takes forever. I mean, it took me a couple days to, number one, strip all the logs. Number two, you've got to pound up all of the chips into, you know, digestible small pieces. And then after you do that, you've got to boil everything down. And then after you boil everything down, you know, boil it together, you've got to reduce it. Because now you've got the tannins, but the tannins are in all of this water, and if you put tannins and water on wood, it's just going to raise the grain. It's not going to do what you want it to. It's not going to soak in there and give it that color. So you got to get the water out. I had, I think, 25 gallons of this solution, and I boiled it down to this. I mean, think about that. What is that? Four quarts in a gallon. So 25, okay, all right. So this is a 25-to-1 reduction here. I mean, that is an unbelievable amount of concentration. But it's, you know, it's what you have to do if you wanna do it. Mixed it with pine tar. I used natural linseed oil, not not boiled linseed oil. This is the jar that I've been using over the last year. Basically, I just filled a little bit of it with linseed oil at the bottom to get that last little bit. But, you know, you can see the polymerization on the bottle. Here's a new bottle, and then here's all that polymerization. I've been using this bottle for over a year, and I just ran out of it. So that's how far this goes. I've been coating, I don't know how many different handles. So, and I thought to myself, I could sell this for, I don't know, 25, 30 bucks a bottle. But, you know, at the end of the day, I might have a couple $100, but, you know, number one, that's not going to pay anybody's mortgage. But number two, I don't know that that's really where my heart is in this. I mean, and then I start to think, well, you know, a couple $100 for the 40 hours that I have into this. It's, I mean, I can flip burgers at McDonald's and make more money. So, you know, I just thought to myself, I think I'm going to give away my existing stock. I might sell one or two if somebody is, you know, but there are people that have been kind of with me from the start and, you know, really supportive with comments and constructive criticism and just helpful. And I think that's kind of going to be my way of saying like, hey, I appreciate us, our little thing, you know, is in this axe community. So I'm going to send Kevin a bottle of this Woodsman axe oil, which is awesome. This will give you almost, I don't want to say immediately to create expectations, but this is the quickest way to give your axe a beautiful, well-worn look. It is especially nice on white oak. I mean, oh my gosh, on white oak, this is amazing. It adds natural color to the wood without that kind of stain, chemically look. You know, it's like that uncanny valley you see with AI. You look at some stains and you're like, that's not really in nature. That is, I mean, everything is from nature. It's derived directly from nature. And I don't know if historically people would have used tannins on axe oil. I don't think historically people really oiled their axe handles. I mean, I really don't. I think people back in the day just got by because they didn't have the luxury of spending 40 hours on, you know, a quart of axe oil. And I have the old vintage handles to prove that. I mean, we're talking from the settler period. They split some hickory, jammed it in the axe eye, and we're off to the woods. I mean, very, very rustic. We had this golden age period, probably between the 1880s and maybe 1920s, where, I mean, that's like the golden age of axes, where industrial production had ramped up, but we were still using hand tools. And so it was like the most industrial attention that our country had was being put into making hand tools for common laborers. You think of how insane that is, how special that is. That will never be replicated. So if you can get an axe between 1880 and 1920, and then after the 1920s, I mean, the Great Depression hit, and World War I caused a lot of changes in labor, and World War II even more. By 1940, axes were kind of done. You know, they really were done. I mean, you had like a couple of instances of companies making a great quality product post 1940, but people were stopping using axes as, I mean, if anybody wanted an axe, there were enough used axes because the guy that used to use that axe is now on a chainsaw to satisfy that demand. And so it just plummeted. Everybody went to the chainsaws. And then you had mechanization with tractors and caterpillars and, you know, big trains and big trucks, and logging was kind of dead the way they used to do it by 1944. The last run of railroad ties. There's a great documentary on Wyoming. It's called the last tie run or something like that. Look up Wyoming hand hewn beam or something like that. That was in the 40s, I believe. After that, we just started sawing beams on the circular sawmills, which were then portable. You could bring them wherever you wanted. So you didn't need to float stuff down the river to the mill or to the railroad or wherever. Golly, I'm on a tangent. I'm on a tear today. Okay, so Kevin, this is coming your way. This is one of my better white oak blanks that I rived this also on the channel. This is 1.25 inches. Yeah, it's actually a little bit better than 1.25 inches. So you could hang this on any axe that you have. 1.25 inches will hang whatever. Anything on the market. Maybe even some of those huge Finnish and Russian eyes. And we are 2 3/4, actually a little bit better than 2 3/4 long. So again, this will hang any axe that you own. The only thing that I did to it is I kind of sawed it just to clean up the edge. That's it. I didn't, I didn't do anything other than just kind of shape it a little bit. So it's easier on you to put a pattern on it. And it has a nice flat edge. It's actually got 4 nice flat edges. But this is not sawn. This is rived. And, here's the proof to that. If you want to know if something is rived, let's see. Can you see that grain? Look at this grain. This grain goes all the way through the axe handle. All the way through, all the way down. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 growth rings at the bottom, and there are 7 at the top, and you can trace each individual grain all the way from top to bottom. I mean, I hope this is a strong handle. I really do. It's, we have a lot of anxiety about this stuff because you send somebody a piece of wood and, you carve into it 1 inch and there's a check. I mean, that would be devastating. I hope that's not the case, but, this is dang near about as perfect an axe handle as you're going to find in white oak. So I'm going to send him this. That will hang any axe that you own. And if you ever want to get into hand carving stuff, there you go. And I'm also going to send him a blank. This is also white oak. And this is maybe a couple years ago. I got an Eric Sloan book, and I thought that the patterns that he talked about in the book were just the coolest thing I've ever seen. I love that idea. I mean, this is back when you were a New England farmer. And maybe, obviously this is pre-industrial age. If you wanted an axe handle, you were making that axe handle. Otherwise, you were making without, So every farmer was a blacksmith and a farmer and a carpenter, and they did everything. And they did absolutely everything themselves. They were totally self-sufficient, unless it was advantageous to trade and do things with neighbors. But you had to be at a minimum self-sufficient enough. And that meant making your own stuff. And so every farm had these handle blanks that were sitting in their barn on a nail. And when you needed an axe handle, you would grab this, trace it out, and make yourself an axe handle. And this is my favorite axe handle. This is basic, very basic. This is, I would call it a bent. I see some people call this a straight handle. Like Liam Hoffman calls his bent handle a straight handle. And I'm like, if it has a curve, how is it straight? So I would call this a bent axe handle, but it's still very, very straight. You can hang this up and down, and the center line goes all the way through center to center on the axe. That's how you can kind of check how balanced your tool is, your handle is. So this would be a great felling axe profile. You could make a splitting axe profile out of it too, if you wanted to. It is, as I recall, 30 inches, which for me is the sweet spot. 31 and a half. So after you hang this, you'll probably have a 30 inch handle, which for me is just the sweet spot. That is for a 3.5 pound axe. That's right where I want to be. So the whole idea here is that you would place your profile, your template on your axe blank, trace it out, and then you can chop it, you can cope it, you can saw it, whatever the case may be. So Kevin, I'm gonna get these sent out to you, and I think I'm gonna give away a number of these. I'll just ship them out, to people that have, I think been a part of the channel and like axes and use axes. I don't like the collectors, not the collectors of new axes. I'll say, I don't mean people who collect axes. You kind of know what I mean, right? It's the guy that just buys a bunch of axes and they sit in his closet, and then he goes online and he tells a whole bunch of other people that they're doing everything wrong. And my policy on all that stuff is go out and try it. If you think there's a way to do something, the way to prove that is by doing it. And then you learn from the experience and you learn from the craft. And so I really appreciate that. I think my channel has a lot of axe users on it. I use axes in my everyday life. And I like learning about axes. I'm not really married to any particular axe ideology. I mean, can you imagine a thing? And so for the users, I appreciate you, and I'll send out some of these to, I've sent out, I think, 2 or 3 already, and I've got, 8 more to send out. So Kevin, this is heading your way. I got the idea from an Eric Sloan book. I think the book is called Reverence for Wood. This is a white oak, but it might be red oak. I can't recall exactly. In fact, I think this might be red oak. I think I said white oak. It's white oak, but I believe it's actually red oak. So you can use this template, or you can carve your own pattern. And I'm going to be sending you out a bottle of this axe oil. So, this has been a weird one. I don't know if I'm going to upload this video. But I may or may not, But anyways, I'll catch you for the next one.